Welcome everyone to another episode of Tutorial Tuesday. It is week 24, 2019. I'm glad that you're along with us. Hey, today I'm going to be broadcasting from a couple different monuments here in Utah. One is the Golden Spike Monument, and the other will be Spiral Jetty, so look for those updates. Behind me, though, what's pretty cool, if you're into this kind of thing, is Northrop Grumman. They test fire rockets and things like that, and you can see them across the horizon. It's pretty cool. But let's get right into your questions and look forward to those updates from these monuments. As far as time of day for pictures, I look to 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning, and then also 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening, and that's because the sun is at a low angle and creates beautiful directional light. Now, while that is the most ideal times to be taking pictures in, what we have to do as professionals is create great images regardless of the time of day that we're shooting at, and also regardless of the situation that we find ourselves in. So this is definitely the comedy portion of Tutorial Tuesday. I'll show you a picture of how you can be more Western. Clearly, in my bronc riding days, I was #more Western. Your editing style and your shooting style are a reflection of your voice. And I'm going to link you over to my friend Bruce Dorn's post from today, and I really want you to take it to heart and give that a read. To finish this question off, to develop your own shooting style and to develop your own editing style, you have to do them. In other words, you can't just edit one way. Try many different things and shoot many different ways. Good question here. I always love talking about the technical details. For me, hands down, it would be the 16 to 35. That is the lens that I would choose to go out and about with, to any branding with. For me, the 16 to 35. So I have a 580 EX2, rather kind of an old Canon flash, but I bought a 26-inch Westcott Rapid box that goes into, and I'll tell you what, for a single person, for a high school senior or something, it's perfect. As it turns out, there's no service out by Spiral Jetty and Golden Spike. So anyways, I'll post a couple pictures, but for now we're visiting the Rocket Labs with Northrop Grumman, and we'll get right back into your questions. The short answer to this is yes. What you want to do is make sure when there's travel involved, you want to be able to recoup that as a business or factor that into the costs in the end product that you're producing. This is a really good question, one that I like to talk about quite often. As far as my watermark goes, I came up with mine on my own after a good handful, 7 or 8 years of being in the business and not wanting somebody else to design it for me. So with my watermark, it did take me a good handful of years to come up with my own. Mine used to stretch across the whole bottom of the frame, and then I shrunk that down over time. Let's talk about using it next. One of the reasons I like this part of the question so much is because there's also a fair amount of business in this question. In other words, if somebody doesn't want your watermark on the image, like a commercial company, you can negotiate that into the price. But for everything else, so depending on the company that you're working for, whether it be commercial like business to business, you may negotiate in having your watermark on or off. Now for high school seniors and engagements and stuff like that, you'll probably want it on. For me and my business, I would say 98% of the time, my watermark is always on my images, and that goes for prints as well. When I order a print, my watermark is smaller in the right-hand corner than it is for social media. Out of Lightroom, my export settings are set to JPEG with a quality of 85, and I limit the size, the longest edge, to 3000 pixels, and I do so at 300. So those are my settings. Hope it works for you. Oh, I love talking about flashes and settings and stuff like that, but I can tell you this particular question I could spend all day on. What I would encourage you to do first is look up the guide numbers for the flash that you're using. These guide numbers can be very techy and very photo nerdy, hashtag photo nerdy. I think that's a thing. If it's not, it is now. But when we work in studio or we work with a flash, without getting too hashtag photo nerdy, what this guide number will do for you is it'll calculate a distance, a given distance from flash to subject, or a given f-stop that you can use. Now, What this comes down to in reality is getting comfortable with the distance from your flash to your subject and knowing how much power that your flash has to light up a whole group or 1 or 2 or 3 different people. Here's my rule of thumb with my flashes. I can be at approximately f8 from about 10 feet away and be on half power with my light. And that works out really well for me. And then I adjust down from there. So instead of shooting at f8 and having the power on the light match that, if I wanted to shoot at f4, then I would power down my light accordingly, so maybe a quarter power instead of half power. Now, to address the harsh light, that's not a bad thing, but understanding the light and knowing how to use the light is a good thing. So you could move your off-camera flash in much closer and do a headshot, or you could buy a ridiculously large softbox and have that maybe 10 feet from your subject and get that soft light as well. But if you're using an off-camera flash like that, you would have to get it in closer to me. All right, for this question, I have to assume a few things. Number one, I'm going to assume that you're not using an L-series lens. In other words, one of those lenses that allow you to shoot with an aperture of 2.8. And I'm also going to assume that it's a bright sunny day with no clouds in the sky. Because if it was, and if I was at 2.8 and I was shooting at 1/1000th of a second, my image would be severely overexposed. In fact, in conditions like that, 1/2500th of a second is going to get me somewhat of a balanced exposure. So what I would recommend to you is up your ISO first. So in short, if you're using a kit lens, in other words, one of those lenses that starts at f3.5 and as soon as you zoom in, it goes to 5.6, that might be what you're seeing. And if that's the case, you just need to adjust accordingly. And to do that, to maintain that shutter speed, what you will have to do is up the ISO to ISO 500, even 800 sometimes. So take a look at that.